the one that I chose, it's quite different. You know, we alternate every other week just for if you get the book. And sometimes people can't tell which one of us had written it because they think, oh, that sounded a lot more like Jyotish, but it was Devi, or vice versa. So anyway, this is one that I chose out of all of them. And it's quite different from what Jyotish just shared. This is called The Light Shining in Darkness. I have a confession to make. There are times when I can become stubborn. I expect this can be a little challenging for my friends, but at times it has produced some interesting results. Here's an example. While in college, my friends and I would occasionally sign up as subjects for psychological experiments. These were harmless enough and we got paid for our time. We actually came to enjoy them because the psychologists never told us what they were really studying, so we had to guess the true focus of their research. During one such experiment, the psychologist brought me into a room which was empty except for a chair placed in the middle. After I got settled on it, she shut the door, turned off the lights, and left me sitting alone in complete darkness. Then a disembodied voice from another room said, "The object of our experiment is to see if the eyes can track movement of a point of light in complete darkness." A point of light suddenly appeared before me. I focused on it, trying to sense any movement. To help orient my perception, I extended my arm with my thumb pointing upward and placed it next to the tiny point. Although I couldn't see my thumb, I could sense its relation to the light. In this way, I could track any movement by the distance of the light from my thumb. Then the voice said, "Now tell us if the light is moving to the left or to the right." By keeping my arm steady, I could tell the light had remained stationary. "It's not moving either way," I said. The voice replied, "It is moving. Tell us in which direction." "Sorry," I said, "it's not moving." This exchange went on several more times. Finally, with a deep sigh, the researcher said, "Okay, now tell us which diagonal direction the light is moving." Still keeping my arm and thumb fixed in a position next to the light, I could tell there wasn't any movement and I wasn't about to be deterred. There I was, alone in a totally dark room, but still after each of several attempts to convince me otherwise, I replied, "Sorry, but it's not moving." At this point, the disembodied voice became totally silent. I waited for a while and finally said, "I don't care if you never let me out of this room. The light has not moved." After another period of silence, the lights in the room came on, a door opened, and a very frustrated looking psychologist entered. Somewhat embarrassed, she confessed, "You were right. The light wasn't moving. But the point of the experiment was to see if we could influence you to say it was. Every other person said they saw movement, so we're throwing out your data." So much for objective science. This experiment stuck with me for a long time, and I drew an important lesson from it. I had no outer point of reference with which to judge, but I could sense my own relationship to the light, which told me it was steady. There are times in the spiritual journey when we grow discouraged or when doubts assail us. The path before us can become obscure. We may feel lost with no light to guide us. Then the questions come, am I good enough to follow a path to God? Will these teachings really work for me? At such times, try to feel your own relationship with divine light. Though you may not be able to see it, try to sense its steady, unmoving presence within you. Those of materialistic consciousness may try to convince you that the light is no longer there, or you know you saw it, or simply not there at all, but determinedly cling to its ever-present reality. There's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyananda told us about Rajarsi Janakananda, Paramahansa Yogananda's most advanced disciple. Rajarsi was just at the point of attaining Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the highest state of consciousness, when suddenly everything went dark inwardly. For years during meditation, he'd been seeing a great light, but in an instant, it all vanished. There was a strong temptation to doubt everything he'd experienced, but he kept trying. After days of darkness, suddenly Rajasi saw a little point of light, and gradually it came closer and closer. The light expanded until it became Yogananda, then his guru, Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Babaji, and then finally Rajasi merged into the infinite. Swamiji concluded this story by saying that before we can merge into God, each one of us will have to face a similar final test of piercing through the darkness. And so even now, if the light seems to disappear, cling with determination and even doggedness to the truth that it is unmoving and unchanging. That light is the source of all that is. It is our truest reality, and we must eventually claim it as our own. With joy, Nayaswami Devi. So, why did I write this? I think in a way it's pretty evident. People are confused now. There's so much misinformation and doubt and not knowing what's real. But if we want to know truth, we have to look within ourselves. And I was trying to use that kind of funny story about that experience I had to show that we have to be, it's a time where we have to be firm in our convictions and not be swayed by things that don't feel right to us. So that was kind of the story behind that chapter.
I might add that we love to see people make comments on our blogs because it helps us relate to how they're receiving them. And this particular blog got a lot of very interesting and appreciative comments because a lot of people struggle with this particular issue of how to remain firm even when we feel the darkness, even when we feel the doubts. And it's a universal theme that devotees deal with, and many people chose to comment on that.
Yeah. And one thing that everybody might not know is, especially if people enjoy hearing you read, we have A Touch of Light as a podcast. And then also how special it is to hear you make your commentary. And we have that as a new podcast, which began just a month or two ago, A Touch More Light. And so those are really great ways to let the message from the blog of that week to go really deep and then to expand on it. And so that's a really great way for everybody to enjoy everything from the book, especially if there's a passage or a little blog that you liked, you can listen to the commentary behind it.
Right. Also, people like sometimes to listen while they're commuting, or some people prefer to listen and not to read, and maybe at night. And so it's nice to have a chance to read these and then, as you say, make little additional commentaries on them.